And he said that Elvis Presley has made the greatest impression. Elvis Presley is out to Hollywood to do his new Paramount picture, Running Wild, for Hal Wallace.
In May 1956, Ed Sullivan told America that Elvis Presley would never appear on his show. He called him inappropriate for families and said he wasn't his cup of tea. The newspapers ran the quotes everywhere. But something strange happened less than 48 hours after a rival show aired. Suddenly, Sullivan was begging for Elvis. What changed his mind so fast? And why did he later order cameras to hide half of Elvis from the audience? The real story involves ratings wars, record-breaking deals, and 40,000 angry letters that nearly destroyed everything. Elvis Aaron Presley entered the world on January 8, 1935, in Tupelo. And everything seemed simple at first, but even his birth carried a shadow that stayed with him all his life. His identical twin brother, Jesse Garon, arrived 35 minutes earlier at 4:55 in the morning, but he was stillborn, and the room fell silent before Elvis had even taken his first breath. His parents, Gladys and Vernon, were shaken by the loss, and they buried Jesse in an unmarked grave at Priceville Cemetery. Elvis grew up knowing there should have been two of them, and he talked about Jesse as if the connection had never been broken. He even sang a song he called The Unborn Twin, because he felt something in him lived for both boys. That belief shaped the way he saw life and death, and it pulled him closer to Gladys, who held him as if the world might take him away too. That tight bond only grew stronger as life handed the family more trouble. In November 1937, Vernon got caught altering a check worth only $4 from a hog sale that should have paid more. It was a desperate move during a desperate time, but it led to something far worse. On May 25, 1938, he was sentenced to 3 years in the Mississippi State Penitentiary at Parchman, along with 2 others, although he ended up serving only about 8 months. Still, the damage was done. Gladys couldn't keep up with payments, and they lost their home. 3-year-old Elvis cried for his father and traveled to Parchman on weekends just to see him through the bars. The Great Depression pressed on them until neighbors and government food assistance became the only way they survived. Those early memories settled into Elvis, shaping the way he clung to the people he loved. Yet something bright lived inside him too. From the time he could walk, he followed Gladys into the First Assembly of God Church in East Tupelo, where gospel music shook the room with voices full of longing and joy. Elvis would slide off her lap and run toward the choir, even though he didn't know the words. Those sounds sank into him. Later, in 1960, he recorded 13 gospel songs in one session as a tribute to the quartets he admired when he was young. Gospel stayed with him, just like his mother's worry and his father's mistakes, and it helped him build a sense of meaning when the rest of life felt heavy. Gladys never stopped watching him closely. Losing Jesse had carved fear into her heart, and she guarded Elvis with everything she had. He called her his best friend, and when she died in 1958, he felt the loss in a way that seemed to reopen every wound from childhood. Her love had shaped him. It made him want approval and warmth wherever he went, and that hunger pushed him to shine on stage, because applause felt like safety. Even so, he didn't grow up famous. He grew up lonely. Kids teased him in rural Mississippi, and he never felt like he fit in. Music became the place where he could breathe. The family moved often, the money troubles never went away, and he struggled to hold on to friendships. At night, he treated music like it was the only thing that understood him. The more isolated he felt, the more he poured into his voice. Over time, that loneliness slowly turned into the spark that carried him to stages he never imagined. By January 8, 1946, when he turned 11, he hoped for something exciting. Maybe a bicycle or a rifle. But Gladys handed him a $7.90 guitar from Tupelo Hardware instead. He cried because he didn't understand why she chose it. Then something shifted. Within months, the guitar became his closest friend. He practiced daily, soaking in gospel, country, and blues. He stood on chairs at talent shows so he could reach the microphone. By 12, he was performing on radio. When bullies cut his guitar strings at school, classmates gathered coins to help him replace them. Those moments told him he wasn't invisible. Late in 1948, the family moved to Memphis, hoping for better work, but poverty followed them into government housing. Still, the guitar came with him, and he never stopped practicing. Things changed again in June 1953 after he graduated from Humes High School. He walked into Sun Records with $4 to record a demo. He sang "My Happiness," and that's when your heartaches begin. At the time, he just wanted to impress his mother or hear how he sounded on tape. Sam Phillips, the owner, was searching for someone who could blend country with black rhythm and blues, a mix many people saw as shocking in a segregated South. Elvis carried exactly that mix in his voice. He returned in 1954, kept jamming with musicians, and on July 5th, he recorded "That's All Right" with Scotty Moore and Bill Black. The moment the record played on radio, people couldn't believe the singer was white. The sound felt new, exciting, and a little dangerous. It opened a door that had never existed before, and Elvis stepped right through it. Before all that, though, he worked hard. Right after high school, he took a job at Parker Machinist's shop, then drove trucks for Crown Electric starting in June 1954. The long drives gave him space to think, to write songs, to dream bigger. He even picked up the slick trucker hairstyle he later became known for. When he auditioned for Eddie Bond that same summer, Bond told him he should stick with truck driving because he would never make it as a singer. Rejection like that can break a person. But Elvis already knew what it felt like to be knocked down. He kept practicing until his fingers burned. That work ethic grew out of the same poverty that had shaped him since birth. His breakthrough came on July 19, 1954, when his first single, "That's All Right," was released. During that July 5th session, he had picked up Arthur Crudup's song and turned it into something alive and new. Sam Phillips heard it immediately. Dewey Phillips played it over and over on July 7th because listeners kept calling in disbelief. More than 40 calls poured in that night. That reaction signaled the birth of rock and roll, and Elvis stood at the center of it. Between July 1954 and November 1955, he released 5 Sun singles, 10 songs in total. They didn't reach the national Billboard Top 40, but they spread across the South like wildfire. One of them, "I Forgot to Remember to Forget," reached #1 on the Billboard Country chart in 1955. Elvis had become a regional star, and the fan base kept growing even if the national charts didn't notice yet. His first real national breakthrough came with "Baby Let's Playhouse," released in April 1955. It climbed to #5 on Billboard's Top 40 Country Hits by July 16, 1955. That song caught the attention of big record companies. Suddenly, Elvis wasn't just a Southern favorite, he was a rising force. Then a figure stepped into his life who changed everything. Colonel Tom Parker, a Dutch immigrant with a past he hid behind stories and carnival tricks, saw Elvis as a gold mine. In November 1955, he convinced Elvis and his family to sign a management contract. Parker wasn't a real colonel, and he had arrived in America under circumstances he never discussed openly, but he knew how to promote an artist. His entry marked the beginning of a long partnership that was brilliant and controversial at the same time. By November 21, 1955, Parker had arranged a deal with RCA Victor that shook the music industry. RCA paid Sam Phillips $40,000 for Elvis's contract, an amount so large it made national headlines. It opened doors to distribution, promotion, and a national audience that Sun Records could never reach. Elvis Presley's rise began with a shockwave that moved through America faster than anyone was ready for. And it all started when Heartbreak Hotel came out on January 27, 1956. The song slipped into the Billboard Pop chart at number 68 on February 22nd, then climbed so fast that by April it was sitting at number 1. It held that spot for 7 weeks. It stayed on the chart for 27 weeks. It sold more than 1 million copies by mid-1956, giving Elvis his first gold record. And people watched something new happening as it became only the second single in history to hit #1 on the pop, country, and R&B charts. By March 7th, the record had already crossed 300,000 sales, and the numbers kept rising. Heartbreak Hotel didn't just send Elvis forward. It bent the path of American music, becoming the biggest-selling single of 1956 and pushing Elvis into a national spotlight almost overnight. Soon, the whole country was watching him, and that attention exploded on June 5, 1956, when Elvis walked onto the Milton Berle Show. He performed Hound Dog without a guitar, using the microphone like it was part of his body, moving his hips in a slow and playful way that older viewers called dangerous and indecent. The whole thing lasted just a little over 2 minutes, but the reaction was instant. Within 10 days, Milton Berle received an estimated 500,000 angry letters from people calling Elvis vulgar and obscene. A music teacher named Harry A. Feldman even called it execrable taste, almost obscene, while others simply said it felt animalistic. The backlash only made the performance bigger. People argued about him everywhere, and with every debate, Elvis's fame grew hotter, making him both a target and a superstar at the same time. That set the stage for what happened on July 1st, 1956, when Steve Allen, who was contractually required to feature Elvis, decided to soften the controversy. He dressed Elvis in a tuxedo and had him sing Hound Dog to a live basset hound on stage. Elvis barely moved. Everything felt stiff and safe, and many fans saw it as humiliating. Even a young producer named John Landau said he felt deeply offended watching it. Elvis felt it too. When he went back to Memphis afterward, he told the crowd he would show them the real Elvis that night. And that moment on Steve Allen's show became a symbol of how television tried to tame rock and roll, even though it never fully worked. Just before this, something else had unfolded. In May 1956, Ed Sullivan told the country that Elvis would never appear on his show. He said the performances were not appropriate for families and even called Elvis not my cup of tea. Newspapers ran the quotes everywhere, but everything flipped in less than 2 days after Elvis's Steve Allen appearance aired opposite Sullivan's show. Steve Allen pulled a Trendex rating of 20.2, while Sullivan's dropped to 14.8. Allen took 55.3% of the audience, while Sullivan held only 39.7%. CBS panicked. Executives immediately contacted Colonel Tom Parker, begging for Elvis to appear. Suddenly, Sullivan's moral concerns disappeared. Ratings mattered more than anything else. Colonel Parker saw the opening and pushed it further. He negotiated a record-breaking deal for Elvis to appear on Sullivan's show 3 times for a total of $50,000. That was more than $16,000 per appearance, at a time when other performers were getting around $5,000. The amount was unheard of and made Elvis the highest-paid television performer in 1956. It even stayed unmatched when the Beatles went on the same show in 1964 for only $10,000. So 3 appearances were set for September and October 1956. Then, a final one in January 1957, solidifying Elvis as a national force, whose controversy only made him more valuable. But controversy kept following him. When Elvis appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show in September and October 1956, the cameras showed him head to toe. That decision brought roughly 40,000 complaint letters to CBS from church leaders and parent-teacher groups, calling his moves obscene and inappropriate. Supportive letters came too, but they totaled around 30,000, showing just how deeply divided people felt. Newspapers printed warnings about the dangers of Elvis's influence. The pressure grew so heavy that CBS and Sullivan had to rethink how they would show him on television. That wave of criticism is what led to one of the most famous decisions in broadcast history. On January 6, 1957, during Elvis's 3rd and final appearance on Sullivan's show, cameras were ordered to show him only from the waist up. Producers wanted no sight of his hips or legs. Even so, the crowd's reactions hinted at what they still couldn't see, which made the performance feel even more charged. Some people believed this strict censorship happened because Elvis had exaggerated his movements during an earlier appearance, possibly even using a cardboard tube as a prank, although no one ever proved it. Whatever the truth was, the waist-up broadcast became a symbol of how the culture and the network were clashing. Even censored, Elvis delivered massive ratings and cemented the moment as one of the most memorable in TV history. After this, Colonel Parker was furious. The censorship angered him deeply, and he decided to make sure networks couldn't control Elvis again. He demanded $300,000 for any future television appearance. The number was so high that no network could agree to it. As a result, Elvis didn't return to national television until 1960, after his Army service. The move made Elvis rarer and more mysterious, which Parker believed increased his value, even though it pulled him away from the television world that was shaping American culture. Then came March 24, 1958, the day known as Black Monday. Elvis reported to the Memphis Draft Board and was inducted into the United States Army. His serial number was 53310761. Colonel Parker arranged for news crews worldwide to capture every moment. After processing at Kennedy Veterans Hospital, Elvis boarded a bus to Fort Chaffee in Arkansas. Later, he was sent to Fort Hood in Texas for basic training. Many expected him to join special services to avoid regular duty, but Parker believed serving as a normal soldier would help Elvis's public image. So Elvis worked, trained, and lived like every other serviceman for 6 months before being sent to Germany. The choice shaped how people saw him, showing discipline and humility even while he was at the height of fame. Just before leaving for Germany, something broke inside him. On August 14, 1958, his mother Gladys died suddenly at 46. Elvis rushed home on emergency leave, but arrived too late to say goodbye. At the hospital, he fell to his knees beside her bed and cried in a way reporters said they had never seen before. He told them later that it broke his heart because she had always been his best girl. The official cause was listed as a heart attack, though later reports pointed toward liver failure from alcohol poisoning. The grief never left him. He carried it into his service and for years afterward, shaping how he lived and how he worked. During his time in Germany, another turning point happened quietly but permanently. A sergeant offered him amphetamines to help him stay awake during night duties. Soldiers used them often, and Elvis accepted them, unaware of the path it would open. These brown and green pills became part of his routine. Soon he was bribing German pharmacies to get more. The habit grew when he left the military and followed him through the rest of his life. It became one of the first steps toward the dependency that played a role in his death decades later. And it showed how even someone as famous as Elvis could be changed by something as simple and common as a pill passed from one soldier to another. On September 13, 1959, the air in Bad Nauheim felt still for a moment when a 24-year-old Elvis Presley walked into a party and saw 14-year-old Priscilla sitting quietly in the corner. He was already a star with fans across continents, while she was a 9th-grade student living far from home because her father was stationed there with the Air Force. She told him her age, and he looked at her with surprise and said, "You're just a baby," a line she later repeated in her own books. Even so, something started right there, something that grew quickly once Elvis began writing her letters and calling her after he left Germany in 1960. The age gap hung over the story even then, with whispers rising because Priscilla was legally a child, while Elvis was a grown man with fame, wealth, and a world chasing him. Critics called it wrong. Priscilla insisted she was old in life even if the numbers said something else. And so their strange romance began. Quiet at first, but never really slowing down. As the years moved forward, the letters kept coming, and visits happened whenever they could. Then, in 1962, everything changed again. Priscilla's parents agreed to let her move to Memphis at 17 so she could live near Elvis at Graceland. She would go to Immaculate Conception Cathedral High School during the day, then spend evenings in the world of Elvis. She wrote that their relationship was supervised and that nothing happened until marriage, though biographers often questioned that claim. The move to Graceland felt like a doorway opening into a new life, one where she wasn't just a visitor, but a part of his world. It set the path for the rest of their story long before either of them fully understood what was coming. They married on May 1, 1967, in a small ceremony tucked inside the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas. Priscilla was 21 by then, Elvis was 32, and the entire wedding felt designed to keep his image safe, because his RCA contract had a morals clause that demanded a clean shine. Only 14 friends watched them exchange vows, and afterward, a champagne breakfast for 100 guests tried to make it look grand. Fans saw a fairy tale moment, but the reality inside the relationship was more tangled. Elvis wanted control over everything, and Priscilla kept trying to figure out who she was beyond him. Later, she spoke about how often she felt herself disappearing into the shadow of someone the world already knew too well. Then, motherhood stepped into the picture. On February 1, 1968, their daughter Lisa Marie was born, and instead of bringing them closer, the moment created a quiet distance. Priscilla wrote in her memoir that Elvis told her he could not be intimate with a woman after she had given birth because he saw mothers differently. The confession shook her. It made her question her own worth and her place beside him. The shift in their intimacy grew into a larger emotional divide, and before long, it became clear they would not have more children. Elvis's bond with his own mother had shaped how he saw women, and once Priscilla had a child of her own, he could not see her the same way. Their marriage lost the closeness it once had, and little by little the cracks widened enough to push them toward divorce in 1973. While all this unfolded, Elvis was running through a whirlwind Hollywood era. After returning from the Army in 1960, he filmed 31 movies between 1956 and 1969, with 27 of them squeezed into the 1960s alone. Studios treated the films like fast-moving travel pictures. Scripts were sometimes written in only 11 days, like Viva Las Vegas. The films made money, with average adjusted grosses around $68.7 million, and his debut, Love Me Tender, from 1956, earned $4.5 million. But the formula repeated itself again and again. Elvis would sing, flirt, dance, and wander through bright locations while rarely getting a chance to show real depth. He said privately that the Hollywood version of him was wrong, but he felt stuck, trapped by contracts and by Colonel Parker's grip. Shoots were often rushed, finished in a few weeks, and the lack of creative challenge left him frustrated and exhausted. That frustration grew every time Colonel Parker rejected serious roles that could have changed everything. Offers came for West Side Story, Thunder Road, The Defiant Ones, Midnight Cowboy, and Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Parker even turned down A Star is Born with Barbra Streisand because he wanted more money and top billing. He feared Elvis would be overshadowed. Parker's assistant later said the Colonel never believed Elvis would ever be an actor. Elvis, who admired James Dean more than most knew, carried a longing to surprise people with serious work. But Parker's choices boxed him inside musical comedies until the late 1960s, when audiences finally got tired of the repetition. Yet one title stood out. Viva Las Vegas from 1964 became his highest-grossing film at $9.4 million. It was written in 11 days, shot fast, and after production ran long, Parker demanded even quicker schedules for future movies. Films like Harem Scarum were churned out in 2 or 3 weeks, and exhibitors joked that Harem Scarum was his worst picture. Parker even tried adding a talking camel, an idea that thankfully never made it through. Elvis later said his personal worst was Clambake. By 1968, the box office decline was obvious, And Elvis finally told Parker he wanted to shift back to music. That choice opened the door to his most powerful return. The comeback began on June 27, 1968, during a live taping where Elvis walked out wearing black leather that clung to him under the hot lights. He sang with so much force that sweat poured down his body, and after the first session, the designer Bill Ballou discovered something unexpected. The suit had been soaked through with sweat, and with something more intimate. Ballou grabbed every hairdryer he could find backstage to dry it before the next set. Director Steve Binder joked later that he learned to always order multiple suits for stars after that night. The story spread among crew members until it became one of the wildest behind-the-scenes tales in rock history. It showed how completely Elvis threw himself into that performance, body and soul. Right after that came the sit-down sessions, where he sat with Scotty Moore and DJ Fontana in a small circle. There was no choreography and no script. Elvis cracked jokes, teased the crowd, repeated songs to build the energy, and played like he hadn't in years. The casual setup almost didn't happen. Colonel Parker forgot to bring fans into the studio, so the crew ran to a Bob's Big Boy nearby and begged people to come watch. The room filled enough to make the moment feel alive. At one point, when a few people booed, Elvis grinned and said, "Man, I just work here." That night he rediscovered something inside himself, something he feared might have disappeared in the Hollywood years. The finale arrived with him in a bright white three-piece suit, standing before a black backdrop and a giant red Elvis sign. The song "If I Can Dream" had been written overnight because Colonel Parker wanted something Christmas-themed instead. Earl Brown wrote the new piece based on the heartbreak and tension surrounding the deaths of Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. Elvis delivered the performance with a tremble that seemed to rise from somewhere deep inside him. The song stayed on the charts for 13 weeks, and fans still call it one of his greatest moments. The image of him in white, with the glowing red letters behind him, marked the beginning of a new chapter. The 1968 special became a turning point. It topped the Nielsen ratings, drew glowing reviews, and pushed Elvis away from forgettable movies and back toward live music. Soon, he recorded From Elvis in Memphis, released In the Ghetto and Suspicious Minds, and filled Las Vegas rooms again. Before the show, he had asked Steve Binder what happens if I bomb. Binder told him to trust himself. He did, and the country saw the result. Vanity Fair later called the comeback a brief but shining Elvis essence, a moment people still look back on as the time he came alive again. But behind the rise was a shadow that grew quickly. Once touring began in 1969, Elvis performed constantly, 2 shows a night, long stretches without rest. He took pills to wake up, more pills to calm down, more pills to sleep. By the early 1970s, he had built a dangerous routine of amphetamines, diet pills, painkillers, sedatives, and sleeping medication. The Memphis Mafia saw the changes in him. They watched his moods swing wildly. They watched the energy drain. What started as a way to get through shows became a need he could not escape. His doctor, George Nicopolis, known as Dr. Nick, wrote prescription after prescription. Between 1975 and 1977, he provided more than 8,000 doses. In 1977 alone, the number reached more than 10,000. Some were for Elvis, and some for his entourage, turning Graceland into a pharmacy of sorts. Later investigations described the prescribing as reckless. Dr. Nick was accused of doing it unlawfully, though he was eventually acquitted in court. Even so, his medical license was suspended and later revoked. It became clear the situation had spiraled far beyond control. Then came August 16, 1977. Elvis was found on the bathroom floor at Graceland at just 42 years old. The first medical report tried to say drugs played no part in his death, but toxicology results revealed something else. 14 different drugs were in his system, 10 of them in significant levels: codeine, morphine, methaqualone, diazepam, and barbiturates floated through his blood. The codeine alone was more than 30 times the safe amount. Methaqualone sat at borderline toxic levels. The official cause was listed as cardiac arrhythmia, but later analysis suggested the deadly combination of substances helped push his body beyond what it could take. The examiner signed the death certificate before all results came in. Dr. Nick was cleared of negligence, but the story of Elvis's final days stayed wrapped in a mix of addiction, pressure, exhaustion, and the weight of a life no one else truly carried.